James Walker was 70 years old, a quiet man with soft gray hair and a calm voice that rarely rose above a whisper. For 10 long years, his family had believed he was just a retired librarian living on a small pension. They saw the old house with peeling paint, the faded clothes, and the 15-year-old Buick in the driveway, and they pitied him. To them, James was a burden, an aging man they needed to look after. What they didn't see, what he had carefully hidden, was the truth. It was a secret he'd kept to honor his late wife, Margaret. And it was a truth that his daughter and her husband were about to uncover in the most painful way possible. The story began 3 days before the confrontation, inside a private medical clinic in Cleveland. The air was sharp with antiseptic and the faint scent of citrus air freshener. James sat quietly on an examination table, the white paper beneath him crinkling as he shifted. The room gleamed with polished metal and soft fluorescent light. It wasn't an ordinary clinic. It was the kind of place where the waiting room had cucumber-infused water and magazines with gold-embossed covers. His daughter, Emma, had arranged it all. "Dad, you need to be checked properly," she had said sweetly over the phone. "Liam and I are just so worried about you." Her voice had sounded kind, but there was something behind it. Something rehearsed. Liam, her husband, had driven him there himself, a 3-hour trip that felt more like a quiet abduction. He smiled too much, spoke too gently, and called James by his first name as if they were old friends. "It's just a routine checkup, James," he had said, patting his shoulder in that fake friendly way. "You deserve the best care." But as the nurse placed electrodes on his chest, James couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't care. This was control. They were checking his expiration date, waiting for a doctor to tell them what they wanted to hear, that his time was running out. As the machine hummed softly beside him, James's old iPhone buzzed on the table. He didn't get many messages, so the alert made him frown. He reached for it and saw something strange, an email from his bank. That was unusual. He had alerts only for large transactions, ones that crossed a 5-figure limit. His heart skipped. He tapped the screen, and his chest tightened as he read the words, "Deposit confirmation, $300,000 from Unity Real Estate Escrow." The air left his lungs. He whispered the words aloud, confused. $300,000? Unity Real Estate. His hand trembled. Something was very, very wrong. He ripped off the EKG wires, ignoring the nurse's alarmed shout. "Sir, please stay seated," she called after him, but he was already dialing Emma's number. She answered cheerfully on the second ring. "Hi, Dad. How's the checkup? Everything okay?" James didn't bother with pleasantries. "Emma," he said slowly, "why did I just receive $300,000 from an escrow company?" There was a long silence. 1 second. 2. Then her voice came back, bright and shaky. "Oh. You saw it. Surprise, Dad. We sold your house on Oak Street. Liam handled all the paperwork. You're welcome." James's hand tightened around the phone. "You what?" he said, his voice low. She laughed nervously. "Don't worry, Dad. We just thought the place was too much for you. We paid off Liam's business loan with most of it and sent the rest to your account. You'll be comfortable now." James sat in stunned silence, the phone pressed to his ear, the room spinning around him. "You sold my house," he said again, this time barely above a whisper. Emma giggled nervously, the sound sharp and artificial. "It's fine, Dad. We got a great offer, all cash. Liam said it was perfect timing. You don't need all that space anymore, and now you have money for care and comfort. Isn't that great?" James closed his eyes, gripping the edge of the table. "You didn't have the right," he said slowly. "That house belonged to your mother and me." "Oh, come on, Dad," Emma sighed. "You'll thank us later. We did this for you." She hung up before he could reply. The nurse was still hovering nearby, alarmed by the beeping of the disconnected machine. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked. James gave her a faint, shaky smile. "I'm fine. I just need some air." He left the room before she could protest, walking briskly down the long white corridor. The scent of disinfectant turned his stomach. He stepped into the lobby, past the elegant chairs and the smiling receptionist, and out into the parking lot. The sky was overcast, heavy with gray clouds. He stood there for a moment, breathing deeply, the phone still clutched in his hand. Then he took out his wallet, The old worn leather one Emma had often teased him about, and slipped out a second phone. One no one knew existed. He pressed a single name on the screen, Daniel. Within seconds, a deep, calm voice answered, "Mr. Walker, are you all right?" Daniel was not a friend or a doctor. He was James's chief operations officer, the man who ran the day-to-day business of Walker Estates Limited, the company James had secretly built over 40 years. Only 3 people in the world knew it existed. "Daniel," James said, his tone cold and controlled. "Someone just sold my property on Oak Street without authorization." There was silence on the other end for 3 seconds. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice like steel. "That's not possible. The deed is under the company's name. It requires your notarized signature." "Exactly," James replied. "And I've been in Cleveland all week." "I'll handle it," Daniel said immediately. "We'll freeze the receiving account and pull every document related to that sale. I'll find the buyer and the notary." "And Daniel," James added, his voice steady but low, "find out how Liam paid off his gambling debt in Atlantic City this morning." "Gambling debt?" Daniel repeated. "Find out," James said and ended the call. He stared at the phone for a long moment, then tucked it back into the secret compartment of his wallet. His pulse had steadied, his mind already shifting into strategy mode. He walked back to the nurse's station, his face pale but composed. "That was my daughter," he said softly. "There's been an emergency at home." The nurse nodded, pity in her eyes. "Take care, sir." 45 minutes later, James was in a taxi bound for the airport. The soft hum of the road filled the silence as he stared out the window, the city passing by in a blur. His reflection in the glass looked older, harder, and colder than before. He thought of Margaret, her gentle voice, her last words, "Live simply, James. Don't let money destroy Emma." He had kept that promise for 10 years. But now, his daughter had turned that simplicity into a weapon. She and Liam had mistaken humility for weakness. As the plane roared into the sky, James closed his eyes and whispered, "You wanted to see the real me. You're about to." The flight back home felt endless. James sat motionless, his hands folded, his eyes staring blankly at the clouds outside. The old woman beside him tried to start a conversation about the weather, but he barely heard her. His mind replayed Emma's words, "We sold your house." It was just sitting there. Every syllable felt like a knife. He thought about the walls Margaret had painted herself, the garden she'd planted, the oak tree they'd grown from a sapling. Gone. Sold like a piece of furniture. By his own daughter. He clenched his jaw, feeling a cold fire build inside him. She had no idea who she had just betrayed. When the plane landed, James moved quickly, his steps brisk and steady. There was no hesitation now. He picked up his small overnight bag, hailed a taxi, and gave the driver his address. The city outside the window blurred past, neon signs, gas stations, familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. He checked his phone. 2 new messages from Daniel. The first was short, "Funds frozen." The second came with an attachment, copies of the forged documents used in the house sale. His own name, written in perfect imitation, stared back at him from the screen. His signature. His notary seal. Everything fake. His grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. The taxi turned onto Maplewood Avenue, and there it was, his home. The modest 2-story house he and Margaret had bought 40 years ago. The garden was still there, though the roses she loved were wilting from neglect. As the car slowed to a stop, James's chest ached. But then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The front door lock was new. A shiny brass fixture where the old worn one used to be. His hand trembled slightly as he paid the driver. "You sure this is the right house, sir?" the driver asked, sensing his hesitation. "Yes," James said quietly, stepping out. "It's mine." He walked up the stone path lined with overgrown grass. The air smelled faintly of new paint. He slid his key into the lock, but it wouldn't go in. He tried again, harder, but the key just scraped uselessly against the metal. "They changed it," he whispered. His heart began to pound in his chest. He pressed the doorbell, holding it down. The shrill sound echoed through the house. He didn't move his finger. He pressed harder, letting the sound fill the quiet suburban evening. He wanted them to feel it, to feel the intrusion, the noise, the presence of the man they thought they had erased. Inside, there was a sudden clatter. A voice, Liam's, shouted something he couldn't make out. Then hurried footsteps. "Who is it?" Emma's voice, high and nervous. James didn't answer. He kept his finger on the bell. The ringing became unbearable. The chain rattled, the deadbolt slid open, and the door finally swung wide. Liam stood there barefoot, wearing James's silk robe, the one Margaret had given him for their anniversary. "James," Liam said, his grin smug and lazy. "You're back early. How was the clinic?" James looked at him, his eyes hard and flat. "Take it off," he said quietly. Liam blinked. "What?" "The robe," James repeated, stepping closer. "Take it off." Liam laughed. "You're joking, right? It's just a robe, old man. Relax." Emma appeared behind him, her hair messy, wearing designer pajamas. "Dad, what are you doing here?" she stammered. "You weren't supposed to be back until Wednesday. The clinic said what?" James cut in. "That I'd stay out of your way long enough for you to erase me completely?" Emma's face drained of color. "Dad, please, we were just trying to help. Help." His voice rose, still calm but sharp as a knife. "By changing the locks? By wearing your mother's memory? By selling our home?" Liam rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic. We just redecorated. It's what families do." James pushed past them into the living room, and froze. Everything was gone. The antique table his father had carved, the bookshelves Margaret had filled, the old Persian rug they bought on their honeymoon gone. In their place was a massive white sofa, a television the size of a wall, and cheap metallic lamps that glared under harsh lighting. The air reeked of plastic and paint. "What is this?" James whispered. "Where are my things?" "Dad," Emma said, trembling. "We wanted to surprise you. We made it modern, brighter. You'll love it once, love it," he snapped, turning on her. "You threw away my life." Liam shrugged, his smirk returning. "We kept a few things out back," he said casually. "The rest was old junk. We were going to call sanitation to pick it up." James's head turned slowly toward the glass door leading to the backyard. His chest tightened. He walked toward it, each step heavy, deliberate. The sliding door creaked as he opened it, and what he saw made his knees weak. On the lawn, in a heap, lay the remnants of his life. Boxes of books warped by dew, photo frames shattered, Margaret's old rocking chair snapped in two, and on top, a torn canvas. The lake painting. Her final masterpiece. A muddy footprint across the sky she had painted. James stared at it in silence. The air felt thick. His throat burned. Next to the pile stood a cardboard sign hammered into the ground with a single word written in Liam's sloppy handwriting: "Free." Something inside him broke. He knelt beside the pile, his trembling hands brushing the torn edge of the painting. "You," he said softly, his voice cold and shaking, "did this." Liam stepped onto the patio, still wearing the robe. "It's just stuff, James. You can't take it with you." "That robe," James said, pointing. "Take it off." Liam laughed again. "You're losing it, old man." Emma reached for her father's arm. "Dad, please. Let's just go inside and talk." James turned to her slowly, his eyes filled with something she had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, but pure disappointment. "Talk? You sold my home, Emma. You threw your mother's memories in the trash. You let this parasite live here and call it a favor. You haven't just redecorated, you've erased me." Liam folded his arms smugly. "You'll thank us one day," he said. James straightened, staring at the two of them, his voice low and steady. "No, Liam. One day, you'll regret this more than anything you've ever done." The night grew heavier, the clouds pressing low as James stood silently before the two of them. The air in the living room was thick with the smell of paint and betrayal. He looked at Emma, really looked at her, and saw the little girl she used to be, the one who once clung to his leg when thunder scared her, who used to call him her hero. "You used to love this house," he said softly. "You said you wanted to get married under that oak tree. What happened to you, Emma?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Liam scoffed. "People change, James. The world changes. You should too." James stepped closer to Liam, his voice suddenly cold and precise. No, Liam. Decency doesn't change. Character doesn't change. You've just learned to lie better. Liam's smirk faltered. Emma looked between them nervously. Dad, please, this isn't helping. James interrupted sharply. Do you think I need help, Emma? Do you think the man who built this home, who raised you, who paid your tuition and your wedding, needs your kind of help? His tone made her flinch. You don't know what you've done, Emma. You've played a game you're not ready for. Emma began to cry quietly. Dad, we just wanted to make things easier. Liam said, James repeated bitterly, his eyes narrowing. That's the problem. You let this man think he could control what your mother and I built with our own hands. Liam stepped forward, anger replacing arrogance. You're done, old man. The house is sold, the deal's done, and the papers are legal. What are you going to do, sue us? James tilted his head slightly, a faint smile curling his lips. No, Liam, he said. I don't sue people. I erase them. For the first time, Liam's confidence wavered. What's that supposed to mean? James didn't answer. He simply walked to the mantel where his late wife's photograph once stood, now replaced by some tacky abstract sculpture, and picked it up. The sculpture slipped from his hand and crashed to the floor. Oops, James said, his calm tone returning. That looked expensive. Then he turned to Emma. You have 1 hour to pack whatever belongs to you personally. After that, you'll no longer have access to this house or anything inside it. Emma blinked. Dad, what are you talking about? He smiled faintly. Ownership, sweetheart. Real ownership. He pulled out his phone, the hidden one, and dialed Daniel. Activate Clause 14, James said. Daniel's reply came instantly. Understood, sir. Liam frowned. What clause? The one your lawyer should have warned you about, James said flatly. The property you sold isn't owned by me. It's owned by Walker Estates Limited, a company you'll soon discover has more lawyers than your entire family tree. Emma gasped softly. Dad, what do you mean? It means, James continued, that you never sold my house. You sold a holding managed by a trust one created before you were born. And you used forged documents. That, Emma, is fraud. Liam's face went pale. That's ridiculous. I saw the deed. James raised an eyebrow. Did you? He turned his screen toward them, displaying a document Daniel had just sent, an original digital copy of the trust deed filed under Margaret's name. The signature line read, In memory of my wife, for the good of our family's future. Emma's lips trembled as she read it. Liam tried to speak, but no sound came out. You should have read the fine print, James said softly. The house, the land, the accounts, they were all protected by Margaret's legacy. You can't steal what you don't own. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, thunder rumbled as if echoing his words. Emma fell to her knees, sobbing. Dad, please, I didn't know. Liam said it was fine, that the lawyer handled everything. And you believed him? James asked, his voice trembling with grief more than anger. You believed a man who's never built a thing in his life over your own father? Liam finally snapped, shouting, You're bluffing. You can't just kick us out. James looked at him evenly. Oh, I'm not kicking you out, Liam. The authorities will handle that part. Almost on cue, headlights swept across the driveway, followed by the crunch of tires on gravel. 2 black sedans pulled up outside the house. Liam's face drained of color. Who's that? He stammered. Security, James said calmly. From the estate. They'll escort you both to a hotel until this matter is legally resolved. Emma rose shakily. Dad, please, we didn't mean to hurt you. He looked at her for a long moment, the weight of his heartbreak etched deep into his expression. Intentions don't matter when the damage is done, Emma. The front door opened and 2 men in suits stepped in silently. Mr. Walker, one asked. James nodded. Assist them with their belongings. Make sure nothing leaves that belongs to the estate. The men nodded and moved swiftly. Liam tried to resist, but one firm look from James stopped him cold. This isn't over. Liam spat as he was led toward the stairs. James's voice was quiet but final. "It was over the moment you sold what was never yours." Emma paused near the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, please forgive me." He said nothing. Only turned his eyes toward Margaret's empty wall and whispered, "I already did." When the cars drove off into the rain, James stood alone in the living room. The silence felt heavier than before, but it was cleaner, pure. He looked around at the hollow, lifeless furniture, the walls stripped of history. Slowly, he walked to the corner where Margaret's painting had lain torn and bent. He lifted it carefully, brushing the dirt from her signature. "You were right, love," he murmured. "Money does reveal people." He stared out the window as lightning cracked the sky. "But you also taught me that peace comes when the storm is done." He smiled faintly. "The storm is done." The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across the drenched lawn. James sat quietly at the kitchen table, a cup of black coffee steaming in front of him. The security team had already restored the locks, boxed up the cheap furniture, and begun bringing back the few pieces he'd managed to recover from storage. The house was slowly breathing again. It wasn't as full as before, but it was his. Every creak, every echo reminded him of the years spent building, not wealth, but a legacy. He stared at Margaret's repaired painting, now gently drying by the window. The sky in it looked bruised yet bright, just like the morning outside. His phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Police report filed. All accounts secured. Liam attempted a withdrawal this morning. Denied. The investigation has begun." James sighed, setting the phone down beside his mug. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a quiet, steady ache. Emma's face lingered in his mind, the guilt, the tears, the confusion. She wasn't evil. She was lost. And Liam had simply been the shadow that thrived in her weakness. "I failed her," he murmured. "I gave her everything except discipline." He leaned back, watching dust dance in the golden light. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. By noon, Daniel arrived in person, a tall man with calm eyes and a neat suit. "Sir," he said softly, placing a folder on the table. "All done. The trust remains intact. I've arranged to have the property restored to its former condition. Would you like us to pursue charges against your daughter?" James shook his head. "No. Only the husband. Emma needs to face her choices, not prison." Daniel nodded. "Understood." He hesitated, then added, "You've built a fortress, sir." She didn't realize how strong it was. James smiled faintly. "A fortress built from lessons, Daniel. Lessons her mother and I learned the hard way." After Daniel left, the house felt quiet again, but not empty. James walked through each room, touching the walls, tracing his fingers along the faint marks Margaret's picture frames once made. Every scratch, every nail hole carried a story. In the master bedroom, he opened the old cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Inside were letters, Margaret's letters. She had written them during her illness, one for every major event she thought she might miss. He picked up the one marked "If Emma ever loses her way." His hands trembled as he unfolded it, the ink slightly faded. The letter read, "James, if our daughter ever forgets who she is, remind her gently but firmly. Don't protect her from the pain of her mistakes, let it teach her. That's how she'll come home to herself. You are always her compass, my love. Don't let her drift too far." James sat on the edge of the bed, reading the words over and over. His vision blurred, and a tear slid down his cheek. "You always knew what to say," he whispered. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. For the first time since Margaret's passing, he felt her presence again, not in memory, but in purpose. Later that evening, he received a call. The caller ID read Emma. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. Her voice was soft, broken. "Dad, they arrested Liam. He tried to transfer the money. I didn't know what he was doing. I'm so sorry. I lost everything." James listened silently, letting her words spill like rain. "Please," she continued through tears, "can I come home? Not the house, can I just come see you?" His voice, when it came, was gentle but steady. "Yes, Emma. You can always come home. But when you do, you'll walk through that door as my daughter, not my dependent." That evening, the rain returned, soft this time, cleansing. James waited by the window, watching the driveway glisten under the lamplight. A taxi pulled up quietly. Emma stepped out, her shoulders hunched, clutching a small suitcase. She looked smaller, humbled. When she saw her father through the window, her face crumbled, and tears streamed freely. He opened the door before she could knock. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she whispered, "Dad," and he simply opened his arms. She fell into them, sobbing, her body trembling against his chest. He held her tightly, one hand on her back, the other on her hair, whispering, "You're home, Emma. You're home." They sat together by the fireplace late into the night. The crackling flames filled the silence between them. Emma confessed everything, the pressure, the debts, the lies Liam had told her. She wept until her voice broke, and James listened without interruption. When she was done, he said quietly, "Your mother once told me forgiveness isn't about forgetting what someone did. It's about remembering what love still asks of you." Emma looked up, her eyes swollen. "And what does love ask of you now, Dad?" He smiled sadly. "To help you stand again. But you'll walk the rest of the way yourself." By morning, the house was quiet but warm. Emma helped him rehang Margaret's painting. Together, they straightened it until the lake met the horizon perfectly once more. "She painted peace into this," Emma said softly. "She did," James agreed. They stood there in silence, both staring at the canvas. "Dad," Emma whispered after a long pause, "will you ever trust me again?" James smiled faintly. "Trust isn't given, sweetheart. It's rebuilt. Brick by brick. Let's start with breakfast." For the first time in months, a faint laugh escaped her lips. As sunlight poured through the window, James sat at the same table where the story had begun, his coffee steaming beside a plate of eggs Emma had made. The house, though scarred and bruised, felt alive again. He looked at his daughter, and for a moment, he saw Margaret's eyes in hers, gentle, hopeful, human. "Welcome home," he said quietly. Emma smiled through her tears. Outside, the wind rustled the oak tree Margaret had planted years ago, its leaves shimmering like gold. The house that had witnessed betrayal was now witnessing forgiveness. And as James looked toward the light, he whispered, "The storm is truly done.